Welcome to the realm of magic and mystery, classic horror and sci-fi. You are now entering the House of the Unusual podcast with your hosts, Eddie and Joe. Welcome all you cool ghouls and friendly fiends to the House of the Unusual podcast. I'm your host, Joe Pavlansky, and with me as always is the maestro of mail order mysteries, Eddie Guevara. Today's returning guest is the amazing horror magician, the one, the only Chuck Caputo. Gentlemen, good evening.
Hey, how's it going? All right.
Great. It is great. We have...
Hello there.
What's up? We have a lot of stuff to go over tonight, but before we get into our topics of conversation, we're going to give our friends of the House of the Unusual a little shout out here. Tonight, we're going to start off with Stupid Comics Magazine, and that's stupid spelled STOOPID. This is a great comics magazine in the way of, what would it be? Like Far Side, Cracked Magazine, Mad Magazine, kind of roll them all into one, and you have Stupid Magazine. There's 5 issues out, 0 through 4. Number 4 just hit, so you could head over to the website, stupidcomicsmagazine.com, and order your copies. Next up, we have 1878press.com, and that's 1878press.com. That's our buddy Dave Haversat's site, and he has some great books on that site about magic, the history of magic, and all that. There's stuff for everybody on there. If you're into magic, the history of magic, it's a really cool site with some awesome books. Go ahead and check that out. Now on to our buddy Todd Machin and his Sea Monkeys. Head over to sea-monkeys.com for all your underwater sea monkey needs. They're always putting out some new cool products, puzzles, mugs, postcards, sea monkey packs, whatever you need for sea monkeys, they got at this site, and they got a lot of future products that will be coming out, so stay tuned over there. Also, check out mymoviemonsters.com for your issue of Scary Monsters magazine. Number 122 is out, the Never Say Die issue. I have an awesome article in there on the Three Stooges on 2 of their shows. You don't want to miss it. So you could order your magazines on there, back issues, or head to your local bookstore, and they should have Scary Monsters magazine on the shelf. And if they don't, head over to the manager and demand that they carry it. All right, so that is our sponsors. And today is, as we're recording this on Wednesday, August 11th, 2021, 1 year ago today, our first podcast came out, our very first podcast.
Yay!
So this is our 1 year anniversary. So, and here's to hundreds more years if we can make it. So tonight we're gonna talk a little bit about what's been going on the last year, how things have evolved at the House of the Unusual, the different people that have stopped by, and we have tons of friends of the podcast, and we're continuously growing, and we want you to be part of our family and part of our conversation. So head over to houseoftheunusual.com, join our forum site there. It's free. You could chat with people. You could ask questions about stuff that we talk about, or maybe you have some novelty products that you want to show off or talk about. That's the place to do it. And if you want to be on the podcast, you want to come and just talk with us, about movies, UFOs, mail order items, magic, whatever it may be, that's the place to do it, man. Drop us a line on there and say, hey, I want to be on the podcast. Put me on, and we'll do our best to get you on and have continuous conversations, man. That's what it's all about, growing the community, growing the conversation, and having a good time. So tonight, let's get on with this. Chuck, I'm going to head it over to you, brother. Let everybody know what's new in your neighborhood.
All right, no problem. Hey, it's great being here as always. I'm working on the line, the magic line with House of the Unusual, and we came up with some killer effects, man. Really cool stuff. Professional magic items that that I've actually used in my close-up performances, and it's based on old principles, some new principles, but all easy to do. And Eddie did a great job with packaging. It's just amazing how he can put things together like this, and it's amazing how many people he knows to get things done. I mean, it's just an amazing thing to see.
Yeah, there's definitely some great products. And right before this podcast here, we did a little interview recording where you showed off some of the products. And man, I tell you what, I'm very excited for them. You know, everyone knows out there, if they've been listening for a while, I'm just starting to learn about magic, the history of it, and especially from you and Eddie and a few other guys, starting to really get into it. And man,
Great.
I was getting pretty excited on some of those tricks on seeing them. And Eddie sent me the Gathering box with the magic in it, and the boxes look absolutely beautiful. I mean,
Oh man.
fantastic. And there's such a handsome guy on the cover. I'm not sure who that might be, but hopefully we'll see more. So Eddie, we're gonna turn it over to you. What's new over at the House of the Unusual?
Well, Joe, very excited, very excited. Like Chuck just said, we just finished the introduction, or part of the introduction, for something that will go live on next week. The best part of everything, though, is, and this is really exciting, is that we have been 1 year. I remember when I reached out to you, Joe, back in the day, and we say, hey, why don't we do a podcast? I just didn't think it was going to go in, and it's turning, a lot better each time. And I guess we're about a little bit over 5,000 people a week now that are listening to us. And that's phenomenal. I mean, we're growing, we continue, and I hope we will continue to grow. And now the best part is that, and this is great. I mean, I tell Chuck, hey Chuck, and
Yeah.
think what a great man Chuck is. I go, hey, can you get me maybe about 2 or 3 magic tricks under your name? So we 3 in 1 week. He had 9. Then I asked him, I need another couple to do a magic set, a professional magic set, and I want to do a professional line. And he put together not one, but he's got, I think, is it 8 more, Chuck?
Yeah, I believe it's 8 more. Yep.
Which is just phenomenal. I'm not going to mention those 8 just yet, because there's a couple that are really good, and these are for like the professionals. And I'm very excited about all this. But other than that, Joe, it's been an interesting year. We've had a lot of lockdowns. Now, of course, some places are seeing a resurgence, and they're trying to lock down a couple. Not lock down. I think they're just making everybody wear a mask. It's not happening yet in my area, but it is happening in other parts of the country. Even though I'm in New Jersey, everything here seems to be pretty back to normal. So I hope it stays that way. Let's hope. We have, I heard in England, it went up, it spiked, and then it dropped off completely. And I think it also happened in Sweden. So I'm not sure if that's going to happen here too. Let's hope and pray to God that it does. But other than that, what is new in your neck of the woods, Joe?
Well, you know what? I'm just kind of thinking over the past year, and even a lot before that. I'm going to give everyone a quick rundown of how this podcast came to be a year ago. So maybe about, oh gosh, it had been around maybe 2010, 2011, 2012 or so. I met Eddie through a forum site called what the heck was it? Universal Monster Army. That's it. I haven't been on there in a while. So we were on Universal Monster Army back in its heyday, when it was real huge and popular. And we got to talking on there a few times. I ordered some mail order items from him, and he sent me more stuff than I ordered, which was absolutely fantastic. And then we got to talking over there a few more times. Then we kind of lost contact after a while. And then a little bit over a year ago, right before the podcast hit, we got together and started talking and said, hey, let's start doing some different things for the House of the Unusual. So we decided on the podcast, and that's how it kind of came to be. We said, hey, let's do it. I was interested in doing a podcast at the time. I wanted to do, I was going to do my own on kind of like horror movies and sci-fi, but I didn't have the technical know-how. So when he was interested in doing one, he has a little bit more of the technical know-how than I do. And, we were able to put it together. And I think we've come a long way from our first one.
Joe, we came, this is the funny part. We came from America, and now we've traveled across the world. And we have a surprise guest tonight we hadn't mentioned, but apparently he appeared. His name is Shmuel. Shmuel, come on in.
Yeah.
Say hello to the crowd.
Hi guys. Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Hey, how you doing, Shmool?
All
All the
right. I'm
way
doing
from
all right.
Israel. All the way from Israel.
What are you talking about? I'm from Jersey. I know all these guys are from Jersey. What are you talking about?
Go ahead.
Hey, Shmool, how's it going? Glad we could get you on the podcast here. Eddie and Chuck have been talking so much about you, and they told me you're from across the pond in Israel, and I said,
Right.
man, that's fantastic. We got some listeners over there. Hopefully some people interested in the same stuff we are. So, this is my first time talking with you, and I'm sure a lot of people out there, this is their first time, hearing you. So I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself and, tell us some of your interests, what you're all about.
Let me
Well,
before you say anything, Shmuel, let me just break in a second, because I
Yeah.
want to tell the people, all our listeners, that what's so fascinating about Shmuel is that in 1970, as a kid, my first item ever order of a comic book was the 7-foot Monster Ghost, which came from the Melton Company. Obviously, I bought the one from Honor House and then bought the Melton Company. And of course, Johnson Smith for years sold it. When I opened up my first Magic mail order in 1985, I started selling that same ghost for 40-something years.
Wow.
Mr. Shmuel did his own version, just like me. So I guess he's what they call a duplicate, or what do they call that? Double ganger? Double, yes, a double gang, all the way from Israel. So it's another me in the Israeli side from Jerusalem. Go ahead,
Right.
Shmuel. I'm sorry.
Right. Right. Well, really, I hail from Los Angeles, and I grew up around the Magic Castle and the magic shops there in Hollywood and the LA area. And of course, I grew up in comic books as an American kid, and I'm 62 years old. So even though you wouldn't know it to see me, I do magic shows and people think I'm 40, but I'm really getting up there. And I grew up in the 60s and 70s and reading the comic book ads and sending away for all that good stuff that we love, right? In fact, like I sent you a little movie. I still have Sea Monkeys going, and I've always had Sea Monkeys going, and it's like, my wife is looking at me, and of course, she's expecting to see something that's in the ads, and she looks at it and she goes, "Bugs. You're growing bugs." But they're beautiful bugs, honey. Look how they move. They have a feather-like motion. And she's looking at it and she's going, nah, they're bugs. So I've bought a few of these various novelties. And I love them like we do. We love the novelties themselves, and I think I love the comic book art in all of these ads more than anything else. I mean, I just love the artwork. But having bought the 7-foot Ghost, and at the time when I was a kid, I wasn't really disappointed because you're so excited to get it. It was we used it, right? I don't think we really scared anybody, but here in Israel, or I would even say back in the States, we started it. But here, over the last, I would say, 43 years, we kind of turned it to match one of our Jewish holidays. So the bad guy in the Purim holiday is Haman, or we pronounce him Haman. And you could, if you're there in the States, anytime in around March during the Purim holiday, go into a synagogue and you'll see, I don't know, 70 kids, 100 kids dressed in Halloween costumes of every type.
It's amazing. I tell you what, Shmuel, throughout the years, I've done many shows for different synagogues, at the Purim celebration. And probably the first or second time I've ever done that, I was amazed. I didn't know what was going on, And but I tell you what, it was fantastic. I mean, it was great. They had their Halloween costumes on, their noisemakers, and
the
noisemakers. Yeah, it was cool, man.
You got to emphasize these noisemakers. Now they first
hold on.
They first started off as these things called.
You mean to tell me that I could have been celebrating 2 Halloweens for the last 41 years? Is that what you're
Yeah,
trying to tell me?
yeah,
You
you
got
got
it. You got it. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that's what we did. We did Halloween and then we did Purim, right? Halloween was just a holiday based around throwing toilet paper everywhere.
it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and it's basically it's funny how I don't think there's any connection between the holidays at all, because one is a pagan Celtic holiday and the other
Right.
is a Jewish holiday, and I don't think any of the ideas ever drew one from the other in terms of what you're doing and how you're dressing up. Like Christmas and Hanukkah, well, things correlate in the sense of giving gifts, and there's a lot of similarities. Except that it's for the exception that we kind of brag that we have 8 days of Hanukkah. It's like
Eight
so
days of presents.
you're right, exactly. So, which of course is only like little tiny presents. The first day you get your big GI Joe with Kung Fu talking grep, and then next day you get a sweater from your aunt.
Oh yeah. And Shmuel, for those that don't know, Purim is based on in the Old Testament. Is that from the Book of Ruth, or I can't remember? Is that Ruth?
Right. No. There is a holiday that where we read the Book of Ruth, and that holiday is called Shavuot. It's 7 weeks after Passover, where we're in the desert and we're getting the Torah at Mount Sinai.
Okay.
That's that holiday. Just because you're mentioning the Book of Ruth. No, the Purim holiday happened 2,000 years later, when the Jews lived in Iran, in Persia, and that's around 2,300 years ago, and it was thousands of years after we were in the desert and were slaves in Egypt. So this is the holiday when there's another Hitler. This guy Haman goes up to the king and says, "Let's kill the Jews." Gets the king drunk and gets him to agree on a date in which they pulled all the days of the year out of a hat, and they decided on this one day. And that word for doing that drawing the lotto, as you would say, out of a hat is called a pur, and that's why it's called Purim. And Haman is the bad guy. He sets a gallows for the hero in the story in the Book of Esther. You could all pick up a Book of Esther. It's a canonized book in the Christian religion. You can read it. And Haman.
So that comes from the Book of Esther. I thought it was Ruth. I'm sorry. So it's
no,
Esther.
That's okay. Yeah, pick it up and read it. It's an interesting story.
Okay.
There's some very interesting things about that book. I digress. The bad guy is Haman, and he gets hung at the end of the story. Him and his 10 sons get hung in the book, and I created, instead of the 7-foot ghost, the ghost of Haman. And I've had, and it's the same thing. I took a balloon and found white trash bags and fishing line. And I've been doing it here for a long time. Whenever the holiday comes up, I'll make like 20, 30, 40. One time I think I had 50 units I sold just on that one day, right? Sometimes we'll start selling them beforehand, or the kids will remember them and want them. So I've sold a lot of these units. And basically, I'm in the area. So I will go with like 10 boys that have bought them, and they'll say, "Okay, I'll show you how to set this thing up." And if I would blow up the balloon, we would make the faces on the balloon with the markers, lay everything down behind the bushes in their house, then tie the string around the tree branches up into the balcony, and then Yeah, just wait till one of your friends walks by, give them a heart attack. You know, and I think the byline on the box is scare your friends and your enemies. Neither of them will thank you.
That's pretty
Um,
cool, man.
yeah, so that's an interesting thing, you know, that in terms of pranks, we get all of the pranks that you see in the Johnson Smith catalog and the SS Adams catalog. We have gotten those from the States and wherever they were manufactured for years. In fact, and I sent Eddie the photographs. In around 1968, a fellow here by the name of Zamir opened up a store in which the logo on this store was one of the illustrations. I think it was the Joy Buzzer, and he's got complete walls full of little boxes, full of. His store is like a living Johnson Smith catalog.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's still going, and he does his store. He's bought the store next to him, and it's filled with costumes for him, and kids come in and buy the gags and the pranks, and it's black soap and garlic gum and whoopee cushions. He sells the electronic whoopee cushions, of which I collect, and he's been going strong since 1968.
Wow.
Interestingly enough, in California, in the 30s, there was a fellow by the name of Burt Wheeler. Now, when the monster movies started coming out, Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, he started manufacturing latex masks. And his store, what you could find, I think you could probably, there's a Genie magazine, which I have, in which you can see the cover of the store and what was going on, kind of, and some of the pictures are in there. But when I was a kid, growing up in the 60s and 70s, you'd walk into Burt Wheeler's magic shop. He had been dead for a long time. He died like in 48. He flew out to Arizona to buy an airplane. He bought it, flew it back, and crashed and died on the way, unfortunately.
Whoa. Wow.
And then his kids were running it. Two of his boys were running it. And then they were having arguments about it. And then some guy by the name of St. Pierre bought it and turned it into Hollywood Magic.
Oh yeah, I remember Hollywood Magic. I used to buy from them back in the late 80s, early 90s. Absolutely, man.
And that was a great store. It was actually, in a way, better than Burt's because it was a real magic shop from A to Z. You'd walk in there and there were boxes, and it was more of a magic shop than Burt's. Burt's had all of these masks all over the place, just like this guy in Israel. And I don't think this guy in Israel had ever been to Burt's magic shop. He had never been. And of course, when I was a kid, and I'm talking about really 8 years old. I mean, I knew about the shop earlier from 6 years old because bigger boys would come and bring, do the tricks. And where did you get that stuff? At the magic shop, which I could never get to. But when I was 8 years old, I rode my bike there. And that was a story within itself. My parents were scared for hours when I hadn't come home. And this is back in the 60s. They thought hippies had kidnapped me. Because that's where all the hippie stuff was going on in Griffith Park. They said, oh my God. And they're Holocaust survivors. So they were like, that wasn't just, oh my God. It's like, hi, Gewalt, the Nazi hippies, they've kidnapped him. So and then the store was run by this old Jewish guy by the name of Irving, and it was interesting. Like, I'd go in there, and I had my yarmulke on my head, and he would talk to me in Yiddish, and then I guess he just didn't think I was going to steal anything, which I didn't, and I would just sit in the back, and magicians would come in.
Isn't that nice? Wow.
Listen,
cool,
I'm an 8-year-old boy. Listening to the secrets. I was like a fly on the wall. I walk up with him one day with my birthday money, and I said, give me one of those appearing canes. He said, what? I want one of those appearing canes like you sold, what's his name, in the last week. He'd say, what are you talking about? I know what it is, Irving. Give me the goddamn cane. He'd say, okay, it's $15. Yeah, $15. Yeah, here it is. I saved up my birthday money, and I bought an appearing cane when I was like 7, 8 years old,
Wow.
and yeah, and then like I bought a thumb tip, and I go home. Now you got to picture my father being a Holocaust survivor and not understanding or knowing anything. I'm in short sleeves, I'm in a t-shirt, and I'm making this red hanky appear and disappear, and handling it actually quite so well that he just couldn't detect it, and it was blowing his mind. I mean, I could the first, and this is the Holocaust survivor who had seen everything. He was announcements. He was like going, "Oh, you're really doing magic," and that went on for years. I never showed him the secret. It was,
Wow.
and it's a lot of even today. It's really funny the people you can fool. I have a friend, a dear friend, who studied ophthalmology here in Israel. He's from Mexico and he's from Tijuana, and he's back there. My friend Hector, and I did it for him. And it's so funny. He's a doctor, right? He had no idea, and I was able to see how their eyes grow, and you could see the look of amazement in their eyes when they don't know
Mhm.
what you've done. And he really
Absolutely.
had no idea. And then, of course, I divulged it to him, and it's like watching the TV set. Like their eyes totally immediately change, and it is the reason why you should never give away a secret, because their eyes go, oh,
Oh,
it's like,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Hey, I think it's grew up in the LA area near the Magic Castle and everything, and you knew the old timers too. If there's anybody out there that knows Slidini and Jack Chanin and all those guys, I mean, you actually knew them. I think you told me in a previous conversation you had David Roth perform at your bar mitzvah. Now, how cool was that, man?
yeah. That was very cool. Jack Channon, he really he was from Philly, and my parents spoke with him in Yiddish. It was very, very interesting to see that. Look, we have this like here in Israel. We at the Magic Conventions we bring a lot of magicians from around the world. We've had everybody here from Jeff McBride to Michael Alma. We had Sander here. We've brought just all the magicians that are popular in the magic world. We've brought
Oh, that's
over,
cool.
and there's a great majority of magicians. As you know, we're Jewish, so we have this like joke about like it's hard to be an anti-Semite when you're a magician, because who are your heroes going to be?
Hmm.
David Copperfield's Jewish, and Houdini was Jewish, and it's just kind of funny. So there's reasons for that, and I think that one reason, though it's going to sound funny, is that magic is a profession that you could put into a little tiny suitcase. You don't need a big suitcase. You just need some handkerchiefs and some thumb tips and a few little different things, and you could travel from country to country that you're getting kicked out of. So that's that's one aspect, and the other aspect is just like comedians. How come there's a disproportionate amount of Jewish comedians? It's always been like that. Jewish writers for other comedians are Jewish. I mean, like Eddie Murphy is an incredible, brilliant guy as a comedian, but he still has Jewish writers.
Hmm. Hmm.
And not just because of Jerry Seinfeld, and it's a great disproportion of them. From Jackie Mason just died. Like he was like almost 100 years old, and
Right,
all
right.
the. What's the reason for that? It's tied into things that are cultural. For magicians and comedians, you can travel the world and
Hmm.
and run away from one bad area to another,
Sure.
right? Um, and interestingly, when you read the Bible says that Joseph gets kidnapped. He goes down and becomes like the viceroy, only second to the king, and then he calls for his father Jacob, and Jacob comes down with 70 souls. 70 people, that's his family, comes down to Egypt, and they live in an area of Egypt called Goshen, which is actually outside where all of the Egyptians lived, because they're Jews and they have their own customs and what have you. They're eating kosher. People are eating kosher food, right? So they had to be separate from the Egyptians. So then, in the Bible, the Christian Bible, you can read it, King James Version, it says, and then came a Pharaoh, who knew Jacob not, or who knew Joseph not. In other words, he didn't know from all of the good things that these Jews had done for Egypt. And then he decides to enslave them. And the question is, how many Jews were there? Only 70 came down. How many had they multiplied within 10 or 20 years? Why did even if they multiplied to be 100,000? Why? How did you know about them? They're a real tiny minority. And one of the great Talmudic commentators said that their names were the big liners in all of the theaters. So, and listen, when you watched Dynasty, or what was the other one? There was Dynasty and the one with with the guy from My Dream
RJ, JR.
RJ Dallas.
Oh, Dallas. Yeah, sure.
So then at the end of this great TV show that everybody loves, there's some kid in Dogwood, Montana going, "Mommy, what's that? Who's that guy? Goldberg, the producer, all the names of the producers and the directors, and it's a crazy thing. Like Gentiles down in Montana are going, wow, there must be millions of them, or because their names are everywhere.
Hey, it's an illusion, right? That's what it boils down to.
Listen, the Warner Brothers and Golden Mayer, they were all Jews.
Right.
Well,
right.
One thing I'm going to say to you guys, which is kind of funny too, is, and it's kind of, I guess it brings where Jesus said first the Jew, then the Gentile. And, it's kind of interesting because when I started seeking out to start my own mail order business in the early 80s, like in 1985, everybody that I would come across that had owned one of the mail order houses, from Honor House to Abracadabra Magic Shop, to the one I actually bought, the Fun Factory, it was all,
Jewish owned.
Yeah, Jewish owned.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
And and that was very interesting how that happened. So
look, I think it's cultural. I think part of it is cultural. Being from a home of Holocaust survivors and Yiddish speakers, you kind of approach life with a certain sense of humor, and then some of the humor is black humor. We have these running stories in our family that and things that really happened to us. When I was a kid, every before the Sabbath on Fridays, we'd go into the Jewish bakery, and of course, other people, not just Jews, are buying from these bakeries and delis. That's the majority. I really think are Gentiles, not Jews, because how the Jews are going to support a business to a certain amount, but there's still a tiny minority. Now, I would go in there with my parents, and we would get, a certain bread that we eat on the Sabbath called challah, and bread and buns and Kaiser rolls and bagels and the whole schmear and cake. And all of the ladies working in the bakery in the 60s, they were all Holocaust survivors.
Wow.
So I would go I would go in and I would say, Mrs. Rabinowitz, how much does that challah cost? Okay. I'll let that sit for a second. The bread is called challah, and I would say, how much does that challah cost? And without turning around with 20 people in the store, this little picture with a yarmulke says, "How much is this Holocaust?" And without batting an eyelash, she'd say, 6 million.
Yeah.
This is the black humor between Jews. I'm not joking.
Wow.
We had this story about how my uncle goes to the synagogue in the morning to pray, and he says his buddy Abe won the lottery, so he's writing a check for the synagogue for $1,000. He wants to make a $1,000 donation. And for the United Jewish Appeal, the UJA, $1,000, and for the B'nai B'rith, $1,000, and for the Nazi Party, $1. So it's really funny in Yiddish when you say this joke. It's very, very funny. But I'll say it in English. So the rabbi says, "Okay, I understand, Abe. The UJA, the Shul, the B'nai B'rith, $1,000, but the Nazi Party." And he looks at him and lifts up his arm and he says, "What can I do? They gave me the number."
That's wild.
He was betting. He was filling out the lottery card with the number they had tattooed on his arm in Auschwitz. Okay, this is like the black humor that is prevalent among Jews.
Let me say one thing right now, guys, and this is kind of when I just said to you about the different companies, including now originally House of the Unusual had originally was the Fun Factory, which was one of the original companies from the comic books. I joined forces with Lou Weiss, the guy who owned it, which I seeked out back in the 80s, and we started the Fun Factory together, and we ran comic book ads. And Shmool, I don't know if I ever told you this, but in 1938, I believe it is, when the first action comic book came out of Superman, the first company that ever ran an ad was Johnson Smith in the back cover. In 1993, the last company that ever ran a novelty ad was the Fun Factory under me and Lou. And I hold that title. Like, there's never been another ad since that time in comic books that dealt with novelties. Now,
very interesting.
Now, another thing I wanted to bring out here, and this is a shout out to our friend David Harversat, is Dave, there's a magician. I think he's still alive. He's like in his late 90s, who is a survivor of the Holocaust. And he wrote a book called Death Camp Magicians, which David owns the copyrights for. And he publishes that book in 1878 press. And the story of this book, Death Camp Magicians, is how two magician brothers survived the Holocaust by doing magic. And this is a true story.
I have the book. It's I'll tell you what's interesting. I'll tell you what the most interesting thing about that book is, aside from the story of Navili and the story of those magicians, those two magicians. What's really interesting is how William Rauscher, who wrote the book, the first 22 pages of the book is an explanation with photographs of who the Nazis were and what they did, because he premises the book on, if you go to any university student, and you ask him, when were the Nuremberg trials, and they'll say, "Oh, wasn't that in the 1800s?" And who were the Nazis, and who was Hitler, and who were the I don't know. Wasn't that something that happened in World War I? The students, you've all seen Jay Leno go out in the street and ask them to name one president, and they can't.
Yeah.
So he writes the first 22 pages of this book is a history on Hitler and World War II. And once you understand that, now you can read the rest of the book.
And one thing I want to bring in for anybody who is interested in the book that's listening to this podcast, they can get it at 1878 Press. That's where they can buy the book, through Dave Harversat.
Or Penguin Magic, or
yeah, of course, but the publisher is Dave Harversat. So
right,
Penguin Magic is one of their suppliers.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, for magicians, these are our Vanishing Ink. These are our go-to places to get any. Check those what I'm talking about.
We just mentioned 1878 because he is partnered with us in the House of the Unusual. So we always want our partners to get first go at it.
I wanted to
Yeah.
get back to magic as far as now. Is it real popular like where you live, Shmool, out in the country where you live? I mean,
Okay.
is it very popular or
Well,
popular
so
and birthdays?
we have a long history of magicians here in Israel. A long history of very good magicians.
Okay.
I myself, I'm a member of the Magic Circle of England.
Oh, okay,
Um,
cool.
the test is extremely difficult as the English really pride themselves. This is a very, very thick and heavy area in their culture.
Hmm.
And you probably win the New York State Powerball before they let you in. Just if I'm going by the test, and when you do the test,
Oh,
they're silent.
I think I did read about that, Shmuel. You have to perform like a cup and ball routine flawlessly or something to
You
get in,
took the
right?
words out of my mouth. I had to do it flawlessly, and they hardly raise an eyebrow. But I did do two original things there that they had never seen, and I got their faces to move when they saw it, and they looked at each other and they said, "All right, you're in. pay your $5,000 a month, and we'll send you the map." And yeah, it's very expensive to be a member because I'm a member of IBM and SAM for I'm already like a member of the Merlin. I've
Merlin,
been
yeah,
yeah, I've been in those organizations a long time,
50
but
years.
and I've been in the Magic Circle already, maybe 25 years. But the test was crazy. So I have only one other member here in Israel of the
Okay.
Magic Circle. But now that being said, I'm the director of the Israel Brotherhood of Magicians. So
Oh, cool.
if you go to israelmagic.com, israelmagic.com, you'll see my website, my webpage, and it looks like a kind of House of the Unusual type web page, with illustrations and a lot of smoke. And if you see the magician, like the fourth photograph down on the right side, that's dressed in a Chinese getup, holding a box with a sponge bunny coming out. That's me.
Okay.
And we've got 300 members. I would say that's about the number, going 300 to 400 members in the small country of Israel, of a population of 5 to 6 million people in a country that's smaller than the state of New Jersey.
Okay,
Okay,
cool.
Shmuel, I got a big question here, Shmuel.
Sure.
Since you are that director, I'm assuming that you are going to magically make the House of the Unusual podcast the only podcast heard in Israel.
Uh,
Is that going to
Yeah.
happen?
Hmm.
Well, listen,
I'll tell you what the issue is that what you're doing, Eddie, is very, very culturally related. I mean, it's basically all of your fans are the guys that grew up with comic books in the 60s and 70s. It's that's really what the genre is. But then again, of course, I'm saying that this guy's Amir, who has a website, and I sent you all that information. He has been at this since '68. What caused him to do that? He picked up a comic book and saw the Johnson Smith ads and decided that this has to become a store. So you're right. It's not just American culture. It comes from American culture, but it's very widespread around the world. I'm sure right now in Paris, there's a guy going, "Oh, I remember that ghost. Oh, I scared dear mama. She dropped her croissant." You know, there's some people all over the world. There's a Russian guy sitting there in Siberia right now listening to this going, I remember when I scared the Bolsheviks with that fake ghost. It's it's a cultural thing that touches any kid, and
right.
except for women, except for girls. Girls were on the other end of that scare stick. I'm sure that we're just a sweaty club of boys.
You know what, Shmuel? That's interesting. You bring that up because I've always wondered. Especially around the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s, comic books were they were mainly geared towards towards men. Even the Wonder Woman comics were mostly geared towards boys and men. There was very few girls that actually read them, and it didn't really start.
Especially the Wonder Woman comics.
Yeah, especially with all the bondage and all that in the early on. So I always wondered, how many women or girls are out there that actually read the comics and got into this mail order novelty stuff. And I think that would be great, if there's any women out there, or even girls whoever that were into these novelties, let us know on the website, on the forum, because we would love to hear from you, because mainly it's we hear from men that when they were young they were into this, but we really haven't heard from the lady side. Were they into this? Was this something that maybe they grew up on, and we haven't heard from them? So definitely, if you're out there listening to this, ladies, drop us a line on the forum, because we would love to have you on and hear from a different perspective.
That's true.
On this mail order thing, and see how it was for you, growing up in the minority of this mail order stuff.
I tell you, a thing that surprised me is it was my wife. We've been married; it'll be 30 years coming up. My wife Sherry, and she purchased seahorses back when she was a kid. So she's one of she's one of the few that actually did it.
I got to tell you guys something. I don't know if maybe you guys are aware, but one of the things that in the 70s and stuff, that the Archie comics, all the Archie comics were actually geared towards girls, but I think more guys read them than girls, because I had a huge collection of Archie comics.
Oh, they were great.
The funny, the thing about them though is that what a lot of people don't know is that the Archie comics were actually flooded with mail order items. So I'm sure that there are a lot of girls out there that we haven't heard from that did purchase a lot of novelties, because some of them, I have a bunch. I got, who knows, about 2,000 Archie comics or more.
Wow.
And I can tell you that most of them have some of the best ads inside, especially for like the Ghost. And so I have a feeling that there was a female out there somewhere that took a ghost and scared her little brother. Okay. And her little brother prayed, "Mama,"
Well,
But
when you mention the sea monkeys, I belong to a couple of sea monkey groups on Facebook, and yeah, they're actually one of the best YouTube shows is run by this gal from England, and yeah, there are a disproportionate amount of women that are ladies that are up to this date on those group pages, contributing and doing sea monkeys. That it's an interesting thing. Yeah,
let me tell you something. There was a flea market back, I don't know, I would say back in 2000 or maybe a little earlier, and there was a female there. Don't quite remember her age. She was selling comic books, and I would go to her every week, and I buy a couple of comic books from her, and then we started getting to be real good friends. And it was kind of funny though, because like anything when you're married, wife started getting jealous, but the girl would call me, I would call her, and she would buy, mail order stuff when she was little. And it was kind of like a good friend for me. It was like probably one of the best friends I had met at the time. And my wife, well, I just wanted to prevent the problem. So I kind of let it go on the side. But yet there are females that in our age group that grew up in the 70s and purchased. So I know they are. I mean, now now that Joe brought up this whole idea, I think it would be awesome for anybody who's listening. If you're a female that actually bought your sea monkeys or
contact Eddie, girls, listen up, contact them.
Contact House of the Unusual. And
that would be great to hear from that side of, we're always looking for some different angles of collecting. So we hear from guys around our age, 40 to in the 60s and a little bit later, but it'd be really nice to hear from some ladies, and even maybe there's some people out there in their 20s or so that are just getting starting to learn about mail order stuff or magic, and that's the type of people that we want to hear from as well. And there's in our forum there's a section there for podcast chat. Head over to there and drop us a line, get a hold of Eddie. His email's on the website, and come on our show and talk about your experiences, because that is the type of stuff that we want to, we want to hear from people, not just, us old guys anymore, especially Eddie. He just turned 110 last week. So we gotta get some younger people on here.
I tell you, it bums me out, Joe's. I found out I'm actually older than Eddie. Oh man.
Oh wow, 120. I'm the young guy of the podcast, so I'll take it.
You know what I was gonna say is funny. Yeah, Chuck is about almost a year older than me.
Yeah.
A few months, short of shy of a few months to the year. But the whole thing is that we both grew up in the perfect, the same time. And poor Joe there, he grew up in a time when he just saw a comic book, and when he ordered his stuff, it would say out of business.
Yeah. Well, when the stuff that mainly around when I started collecting comic books around like the late 80s or so, there was more of like advertisements in there for, toys and video games, because at the time, you got to understand, video games started to become very big.
Oh, they were hot.
Yeah, so there was advertisements for that, and then everyone who knows anything about the 80s and cartoons is, the cartoons were advertisements for toys, so there was always ads for the cartoons, for toys, so that stuff really flooded it, and that's what I was into at the time. So that's kind of, I didn't know really much about the mail order stuff then. Maybe the X-ray glasses I kind of knew of, or the sea monkeys. I never had them, but I was familiar with them because of the comic books, and when I would pick up some back issues from 60s and 70s, of course all those ads would be in there, but it was something I never got into actually until really meeting Eddie and starting to talk about it and look into it. I'm like, hey, this stuff's pretty cool. And like Shmool said earlier, one of the things that really dragged me into the side of mail order stuff was the artwork. I absolutely, and I know we've talked about
beautiful.
This before.
Gorgeous.
Man, I love the artwork on a lot of these products, and a lot of it is just some very simple art, with some coloring, some black and white. But I'm kind of disheartened about the artwork today, because most of it's computer generated, and
You're right. Yeah, that
does
does take away from it. It's computer generated.
Yeah, I love that original artwork where it's hand drawn, and it's just it just looks gorgeous. So so the artwork's really what drew me into it, and then
draws you in
to learn a little bit more about it. It's just.
Let me ask you, Joe. Do you games, Joe? Because you mentioned about the games and stuff. Do you still play Xbox and stuff like that?
Yeah, I have a PlayStation 4 that I play every once in a while, and I mainly, after I get off of work at 6 a.m., I'll, I like to, play for an hour.
Wind down a little bit. Yeah, because you know what? Both of my sons, they're like experts on Xbox. It's just ridiculous. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I like it just to relax. Usually, my night off or something, I might play for a few hours just to kind of sit and, zone out. If I had a long week or something, it's kind of just like, hey, get away from reality for a bit, and just kind of, but I grew up on the video game, which we didn't actually get anything until about the 90s, because we didn't have much money. So
right,
when Nintendo first came out, it was pretty expensive at the time, and so were the games. So once after a few years, it got a little bit cheaper. Then we were in those some games, and then I got my first PlayStation, I think, when I joined the Army in '98. So that was one of the first things I bought when I got to my duty station. And it was always, I was never a hardcore, gamer. It was just always something that, relaxed you, got you away from, everyday life and reality for a little bit. So I kind of used that with my comic books, movies, and magazines and everything. So I'm not a hardcore gamer, but I still, there's still a few games out there that I
absolutely
enjoy.
Hey, I saw your article, Joe. I wanted to tell you too. I stopped at a bookstore over the weekend, and I sat there and I had a latte and I looked at some books. I saw your article in Scary Monsters. That was really cool, man, about the Three Stooges. You're an excellent writer.
Oh,
you really are.
I tell you what.
Oh, what did you write about the Three Stooges?
Oh, there was a so in Scary Monsters 122, it's called the Never Say Die issue, and it's about kind of like cheating death, and maybe like potions to make you younger and all that. So I found 2 Three Stooges episodes where they the first one, they make this potion to make this lady younger, and this guy ends up taking it, and he turns into a baby, but he still keeps his, old age looks. And then there was a
Right.
second episode that was kind of, it basically mirrored that one, except for the ending where the guy turns into a werewolf and starts attacking him. So I wrote about those two. I thought I've never seen them before, and someone tipped me off about them, and I watched both episodes. I said, man, this is perfect. It was just, I mean, I'm a huge Stooges fan, so
Oh, me too.
I had to throw
You
that
know-
in there, and that was one of the more fun articles to research that I've done in a while.
Joe, just like he went to see the book, I went to Barnes and Noble. It was kind of a bummer. I was about to ask you to get me one, man. They don't have any scary monsters in it, and I think it's because the Barnes and Noble by my house, the corporate headquarters, is moving into it, and apparently, they didn't have scary monsters, which that's, like I said, a bummer. I'm gonna try another Barnes and Noble.
That's when you
But-
gotta go to the manager and slam your fist down and say, "I demand scary
Exactly.
monsters in
But-
the newsstand."
Yeah,
One
Joe,
thing,
Joe, where could I get a copy of that? Because I'm also a big so I have all the Three Stooges books, and I have, of course, all the videos you could possibly find from the last 25 years. I'd love to buy that. I don't know, where would I get it?
Shmool, I'm glad you asked that.
you just come to the right place, Mo.
You've come to the right place.
Okay.
If you go to mymoviemonsters.com, mymoviemonsters.com, and I believe we'll have a link in the description, but you could go on there and you could order the newest issue, and then they have back issues as well, and they have some specials on back issues. Plus,
Is this owned by you? This company's owned by you?
No, this is owned by a husband and wife team, Don and Vicky Schmaldi, I believe that's how you say their last name. But I've been a contributing writer for them for the last, I think, 2 years, maybe 3 years.
Okay.
So
Which volume, or which the magazine that you wrote this article in? Do you know which one it is?
Yeah, it's number 122. If you go to the website, it's right on the front of it. You'll see it. There's a picture. I believe it's Dorian Gray, and then it'll say 122 Never Say Die issue, and you could click on that and order it right from there.
Okay.
Guys, I'm going to say one thing to you because we're almost running out of time. But I just want to bring up something that's very interesting to all you guys, and I'm sure you guys are going to remember, especially Shmool and Chuck. Back in the 70s, it wasn't just comic books that ran ads. What made fun of the years was that, the years of the 70s, what made it really fun was that you can buy Wonder Bread, and in each Wonder Bread, there will be a surprise gift. Usually it was a baseball card or something. You could buy cereals, and cereals will have phenomenal gifts inside.
Oh, they were so cool, man.
And then the other thing was also you can buy comic books and see those ads. Ads were so popular at the time that they appeared all over, all over the map. It was in magazines of Startling Detective, Guns and Ammo. Any magazine of any field had a lot of ads. But go ahead, Joe.
Well, that's our warning bell there. We're at the bottom of the episode there, so I hope you guys like my little ominous warning bell. So we're gonna.
By the way, Joe, they won't send it to Israel. Only in the States and Canada.
Oh, really? Well, you know what? I will get a hold of Eddie to get your address, and I'll try to get one. My wife works at Barnes and Noble, so I'll try to grab one there and see if I could send it to you.
All right.
Oh man, I appreciate that so much.
Yeah, not a problem. So we're gonna wrap this episode up here. This was our, Shmool, I know you jumped in a little bit late, but this is actually our 1 year anniversary episode. This time last year, August 11th, was our first episode. This will actually
happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday to us, man. And this will actually be coming out on the 12th. But, we're recording it on the 11th. So to wrap it up here real quick, because we got about 30 seconds or so. Chuck, always great having you on here. Thank you for stopping by.
Hey, it's always a pleasure. You know what? There's an old saying in the Italian tradition, "Cindan," 100 years. So I you know what? I wish you guys 100 more years. God bless.
Absolutely. And Shmool, all the way from Israel across the pond. And I know it's real early in the morning there. The sun's probably coming up. We're already up. you know,
Yeah,
thank you for staying up and joining us here.
Well, one
yeah.
last
You're
thing, real
welcome.
quick.
Wait, hold on. I just want to plug the houseofunusual.com and go to the forums. Go to the forums. I just planted a picture there, and I want to let you so far asking anyone if they knew what it was from, and nobody knows. So, you know, you can win it as they used to say in Marvel Comics. You can win a no prize by going and trying to figure out. You know, go to the forums. Go to House of the Unusual. Go.
We'll go there. And having said that, I'll tell you one thing. Jesus Christ was a Jew, and I've always had high respect for you guys. Thank you, Shmool. You're the
Amen.
best, brother. Amen.
You're welcome.
All right. God bless.
Good night, guys.
Thanks for joining us, guys. Everybody in podcast land, thanks for joining us, and good night.
Good night.